What is going on, guys? Welcome to this episode of Odds and Ends. It's been a while since we have done a tag video. This one comes to us from VGL58. 12 games that you wish you could experience again for the very first time. Alright guys, here we go. 12 games that I wish I could experience again for the very first time. Now, this was actually a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. I was like, yeah, that game for sure. That game and that game and that game. And all of a sudden I had a list of like 30, 35 games. I'm like, oh, okay. So I weaned it down to 12, but we could do another one of these in the future, featuring like a part 2 or a part 3 or something where I talk about those other games. I thought this was a really cool tag video because it's like, you may have a favorite game in the series, but you also may have a game that's more nostalgic to you than your favorite game in the series, or maybe a game that isn't as good or not as critically acclaimed is your favorite game in the series, or a game that you wish you could go back and play again for the very first time. And I think that's what sort of made this special. As I started writing out a list of games, I was like, I love that game, I love this game, and it really kind of took you down memory road trying to weigh. I really have a nostalgia for this game and I love it, but I love this game too. I only got 12 spots on the list. Which one should I put? So like I said, this thing took me like 3 days worth, maybe 6 hours of brain power, which for me isn't a lot of brain power, but I still used it. So, with that out of the way, I got a stack of games. Let's get to them. All right, coming in at number 1, well, they're not in any order, but the first game I guess I'm going to show you, not number 1, is a game that you guys all know is going to be on my list. It is Mega Man 2. I remember having this game complete in box. My parents were divorced when I was a young age, and I had this game complete in box, and Mega Man 3 complete in box at my mom's house. And I love this game. I can't say enough about it. The platforming, the run and gun style, the using of different weapons to defeat certain enemies and to defeat certain enemies faster. To me, this is a perfect game. So this absolutely had to be on the list. It's my favorite Mega Man game. It's my most nostalgic Mega Man game, so that was an easy one. Oh, I forgot. So for this challenge or tag video, I didn't include any sports games for a reason, because I want to do a video about sports games in the future. And then I didn't pick any compilations, like Atari Anthology or Midway Arcade Treasures. I figured that would sort of be too easy. So, okay. Another game that just reminds me of my childhood. It takes me back to a place and time, and that is Batman on the original Game Boy. I remember playing this on long car rides to my grandparents' house. I remember when I saw this movie in the theater. We've never seen anything like that. And, it's a platformer. It's got a couple shoot 'em up stages in it. You're flying the Batwing, which is really, really awesome. And it's just very nostalgic to me. Now, the other games from the Game Boy that I have nostalgia for: Home Alone, Mario Land, Tetris, and Ninja Turtles Fall of the Foot Clan. But when I broke it down, Batman on the original Game Boy definitely had to be on this list. Just, gosh, it's cheap too, so go out and buy it. Alright, so coming in at number 3 is my favorite Nintendo 64 game of all time. It is Star Fox 64. What a great game. I remember playing this game. I've never played the Super Nintendo version, so this was my first experience with Star Fox. And I remember just like, I love the explosions, I love the freedom of movement, I love you could charge up your laser, and you had these bombs, and you just had to sort of strategize, and you had to do a barrel roll, which was awesome. But then later, as you played it, the game doesn't take very long to beat when you know where to go. But when you experience it for the first time, and you accidentally take out more enemies than are required, you go, and then you like take a branching path, you're like, oh my gosh, it was so crazy. So I remember trying to figure out how to take all the branching paths. There's a tank level on there. There's like a submarine. I don't remember what the submarine's called. But I always tried to get to that world. And you could take different paths to get to the end, which I thought was really, really cool. And then depending on how you got to the last planet, there was like 2 different setups that you could go through, 2 different basically levels on that planet. So that was awesome. Star Fox really, really takes me back. My wife now bought me this game way back in the day, And it's one of the very few Nintendo 64 games that I actually care about getting complete in box with the Rumble Pack and everything. So yeah, had to be on the list. All right, coming in at number 4. Oh boy. Up, up, down, down, left, right. You're a cheater! It's got to be Contra, man. Contra holds a special place in my heart. My brother and I used to play this game, and yes, when we were kids, we would use the Contra code, but we could finish it together, you know, so Contra is one of those games. I'm so happy to have this complete in box. Like, I feel so blessed every day to look around this room at all these games. But Contra is definitely one of those games that takes me back. I remember my parents in their basement, we had like this like 2-seater, like orange couch with like a orange, brown, and white knit Afghan blanket on the back. A little box TV, you know, a little CRT TV. My brother and I used to sit there and play games, and Contra was definitely one of our favorite games. And to be able to experience that again with the music and the atmosphere and the teamwork, which also makes the dream work. Didn't know if you knew that, but yeah, wow, what a great game. All right, let's keep this fun train going. Choo choo. Coming in at number 5. I have a lot of nostalgia for this game right here. My brother and I used to play this game, and it is Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Love this game. This is actually my childhood copy, so there's a lot of playtime put into that cartridge right there. But it's one of those games, very simple to play, kind of hard to master, and I remember, you know, playing it for the first time, and with the Hadoukens and the graphics and like the body slams and stuff. It was as close to arcade perfect as any game that I could remember back then. Now, I think this was 91 or something, so I was like 12 or 13, so at that point my video game knowledge hasn't expanded past, you know, Nintendo and Super Nintendo, but I just remember, like, this plays exactly like the arcade, and, you know, half circle forward punch, you go to the arcade with the joystick, half circle forward punch, and it was the exact same moves. So I remember people lining up to play that game. I remember people lining up to play Street Fighter 2. I remember people lining up to play Mortal Kombat. I remember people lining up to play Area 51, which is a light gun game. So yeah, a lot of great memories with Super Street Fighter 2. And if we could go back and play it all over again, like the wow factor, I think is definitely there. All right, so this game right here. This was my favorite arcade racing game of all time until recently, when Horizon Chase Turbo came out. I love that game so much. But this game has a lot more nostalgia for me, and it is Hydro Thunder. I remember playing that game for the first time when I was stationed in Japan at the Marine Corps not the Marine Corps Air Station. I was at the Air Station, Fatima, but in Camp Butler. They had a 4-player arcade cabinet of Hydro Thunder, and we would just feed dollars into that thing, like paychecks into the Hydro Thunder machine. And just experiencing it, finding the shortcuts. You know, you're sitting in that arcade cabinet, and you feel the boom from the speakers and the sound, being able to jump, using the powers and just blasting through other boats and obstacles and stuff. Just a great game, and I wish they would have made more. Hydro Thunder Hurricane is awesome on the 360, but I think it was download only. But nothing recaptures that magic for me like Hydro Thunder. This is a game that I like to pop in every year and play, and most of the time I'll live stream it. But yeah, wow, like I want to play it right now. Great game. All right, next on the list is a great series that has been neglected for far too long. Sony, right here, look at me. You've been neglecting this series for far too long. On the PlayStation 1, we got 3 Siphon Filter games. All awesome. Buy them. Go buy them. On the PlayStation 2, we also got 3 Siphon Filter games. Skip Omega Strain, by Logan Shadow, and Dark Mirror, which in my opinion is the best one. But I remember buying this game and I was really excited because I had played the PlayStation 1 games, and I hadn't played any of the PlayStation 2 games yet. I still haven't finished Dark Mirror, but Omega Strain, that's the one. Sorry. Oh, don't buy Omega Strain, that's the one. Buy this one, Dark Mirror. Anyway, I popped it in, I started playing. I remember just being sucked into it because there's so many different weapons, and it's like run and gun, but it's stealth, but it's puzzle solving, but it's platforming. There's some collectibles. You've got the scope where you can see in like infrared or thermal, or you can see like a little electrical things going on, you know, like electric fences. You can see where the little power cables are and stuff. And it's just a great game, and the Siphon Filter series in general tells a great story in video games, and I can't believe Sony didn't make a compilation of that for PS3 or PS4, but hopefully on PlayStation 5, they'll give us some of that old siphon filter magic back. Okay, here we go. If I sold off everything in my video game collection, and I said, you get to keep 25 games, this game is one of those games that I would keep. I love Mario Kart 64. It's my favorite Mario Kart game. I love the Super Nintendo version too, don't get me wrong. But Mario Kart 64, for me, is where it's at. It's my favorite Mario Kart game. In my opinion, it's the best Mario Kart game. They built a console just so you can play Mario Kart 64 and GoldenEye and Mario Parties, you know, that 4-player couch co-op experience. There's nothing like it. I remember sitting in my basement. We had this like orange couch, this old orange couch, and a little tube TV. You know, we'd all be huddled around there with 4 controllers playing Mario Kart. Or my brother and I would play it. Or my dad and I would play it. And the introduction to the battle mode, which was amazing. Running around trying to shoot each other's balloons, you know, to get a win. It's a really great game. And man, in my opinion, they don't make them like that anymore. Just me. All right, this right here, this is another military memory, if you will. I bought PlayStation Magazine, and it had a demo disc in there, and it had like Intelligent Cube and like an NHL game. And I had this game right here, the demo disc for Einhander. So you could play the first level, and I played it over and over and over. I loved it, loved it, loved it. The ability to snatch these different weapons and use them. The day this came out in Japan, I went to the base exchange, I bought it, I went back to my barracks room, sat there with my 12-pack of beer, drank my 12-pack of beer, played Einhander till the wee hours of the morning, and loved it, man. Like, you experience, like, in shooters, sometimes when you finally get past a level, you're like, oh my god, thank god I'm past that level. But for Einhander, you're always like trying to find new and interesting ways to defeat bosses, whether it's taking this, you know, claw piece off or shooting right into the face, finding different weapon combinations. You can use missiles and like shoot into the background and explode stuff, which gives you different, like, the possibilities are really endless. And again, another series that's sort of been neglected. Thank you, Squaresoft and Sony. But like I said, I remember just sitting in my barracks room in the dark, and the first level, man, we had that thing licked because we played it so much on the demo that the first level was pretty easy, and then we got into the next level and the next level and the next level, and yeah, just a great game, a fun experience, and it's one of those I wish I could go back and experience again for the first time, definitely for sure. Some people say that you know, Tetris on the Game Boy is the greatest pack-in game of all time. Some people would say, you know, Mario Duck Hunt or Sonic the Hedgehog or something like that. My favorite pack-in game of all time is Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. Again, I was at that age where we'd played Mario Brothers 3 with this top-down world, and the way it was animated, the way they were telling the story, you know, in that game, the power-ups and, you know, the game mechanics, stuff like that. They socially conditioned us to be ready to play Super Mario World, which in my opinion is the best Mario game. But like I said, most of these, my favorite and best games are, it's because we grew up in those times, right? But I remember sitting on the couch and playing it and finding out that the red circled levels, you know, actually there were 2 exits to those, and trying to find all the exits in the ghost houses and things like that. And I remember when I was at my mom's house and we went and visited some of her friends, and they had just bought a Super Nintendo, and they didn't know anything about Nintendo. It was just sort of the hot toy at the time, so they picked one up for their house. I don't even think they had kids or anything, but they didn't understand how Mario worked or how to play Mario. So I was like, I know how to play, and I'd play. A couple hours later, we're deep into the game. Oh, hey, you're so good at games. You should go to Nintendo college. I'm like, is that a thing? Because I would totally be down to go to Nintendo college. Like 12, 13-year-old me was like, oh, yeah, sign me up, man. Scholarship right here. You know what I mean? But yeah, Super Mario World, like, God, what a great game. I just wish I could go back and experience that one again for the first time as well, because the world was so expansive. There was a level of familiarity, like you knew how to play it, but we hadn't discovered something like that before, you know, at that scope. And yeah, just magical times. All right. So when we talk about Sony PlayStation 1, a lot of people would have this at the top of their list. It's at the top of my list, but a game that I wish that I could go back and experience again for the very first time, Metal Gear Solid. Love, love, love this game. Now, when I was stationed in Japan, we all had PlayStation 1s. We knew this guy out in town. He would mod them for us. And we could play like region free games or any region games. And we could play like burnt discs. Well, somebody actually had the Metal Gear Solid game that was a bootleg. It was a burnt copy. But he only had disc 1. So we'd play it. And, you know, I remember how far we'd get into it. But we'd get into it. And just the atmosphere and the storytelling that Metal Gear Solid provided was amazing back at that time. So when this game came out, it was another one of those games where I went over to it. I was on the air station. We had sort of a crappy base exchange, so we went over to the big base exchange on Camp Butler, and that's where we buy our games. And I remember buying Metal Gear Solid, and like, I want to get back to my barracks real quick, as fast as possible, so I could pop this in and play it. And I remember, again, sitting in my dorm room in the dark, drinking a 12-pack of beer, loser alert, I know. But playing Metal Gear Solid, like I said, the atmosphere, you know, you're like sneaking around and you're hoping some guy doesn't see you. And then, like, you'd walk through the snow and the bad guy would see your footprints and it would, like, alert. And he'd, like, follow you and you're, like, trying to go around all these boxes, you know, and choke them out or do whatever. But I just remember when I played this game, it was one of those games where it was like, I have to find out what happens next. And the only way to do that is to beat those little sections and then get another cutscene. Get a little piece of the story. Get a little piece of the story. Keep going. Keep going. So like I said, you know, this game was on 2 discs. And at that point in my... I had never gotten to a second disc on any one of my games. So I'm like, how's this going to work, right? And it goes, dun, 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 dun. It says insert disc 2, and then you put in disc 2, and you're like, what is this sorcery, right? How is this working? How can I open a CD player and then put a game in, and then it just automatically knows where it's supposed to go, right? Crazy. Speaking of crazy, we talk about experience this game for the first time. Gotta talk about the Psycho Mantis battle. And the controller's like shaking and vibrating, and he's like, let me read your mind, right? And he's like, you play too much Crash Bandicoot. And you're like, I do play too much Crash Bandicoot. This is crazy. And then you had to figure out, put it in the second controller port and stuff. So experience this game again for the first time would be absolutely awesome. It'd be magical, you know. Nowadays we can just play through it and we know what's coming. But you know, even the ninja, you know, I love that fight too. Low batteries. But yeah, Metal Gear Solid for sure. I could talk about that game for days. Okay, so the last game that made the list now, VGL58 kind of put down a rule: no modern games, no Xbox One, PS4, Switch games. And for someone like me that's been playing video games since the early 80s, I have a vast library of games to pick from. Somebody that may be newer to gaming that may only have an Xbox One or a PS4 or a Switch or something like that, I wouldn't incorporate that rule. But this game came out on the PS3. We're gonna mention the PS4 version. It's going to be one of my top 10 games of all time. But to be able to go back and re-experience The Last of Us for the very first time, wow. Just wow. Great game, great story. And again, it's one of those games where it's like you want to get through the level or the area so you can unlock the part of the cutscene, the next part of the story. Because what this game does really, really well is it makes you feel for the characters. Now, Joel and Ellie, of course, because they're you know, the main characters, but you know, Tess and Tommy's wife and everybody at that little you know, the power plant, even villains like David, you're like, I hate this son of a bitch, right? It makes you feel something for these characters, and I hadn't really felt that in a video game before. So hopefully when The Last of Us Part 2 comes out, it'll rekindle some of those feelings, and we'll find out a little bit more about the story. Like, I'm so excited about Last of Us 2, I don't know what to say. So, but if you've never played The Last of Us 2 and you have a Last of Us, I'm sorry, and you have a PS4, get The Last of Us remastered. It's cheap. It's like 10 or 12 bucks, and it comes with the DLC, which explains a little bit more about Ellie's backstory. But yeah, if I could go back and experience one game for the very first time, The Last of Us would definitely be high on that list. So, alright, that is going to do it. Those are 12 games that I wish that I could experience all over again for the very first time. Now, this is sort of an open tag, an open challenge. If anybody wants to participate, please do so. But come on back, leave a link to your video in the comment section down below so people know where to go and see you. I'm curious to see your videos or read your comments on the 12 games that you wish that you could experience all over again for the very first time. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and we will see you on the next one.